When I first realized that I was going to be a parent, I was super scared. After 2 or 3 weeks of meeting in the home visiting program, I was totally comfortable with the fact that I was going to have a baby. Yes, I was still scared, but at the same time, I felt like I had some sense of strength behind me.
If I didn't have those resources that Jeanette provided me, I think it would be harder now.
I got into the program and I realized, like, oh, this is nice. And now look at me. I work at a family resource center with parents and families, all this stuff.
I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to meet my home visitor, because without her, I think that I would be 10 steps behind from where I'm at right now.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía. Como cómo cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien, porque pues cosas que yo no sabía, pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
I don't know what's normal for a 22-month-old baby or an 18-month-old baby, you know. When we get together, we usually discuss and get some progress made with the baby. It makes me feel comfortable, and I associate my parenting with her, my home visitor, telling me, yeah, this is going great.
So it's nice to know where they're at, what stage they're at for every parent, and also to give, again, your children that head start in education.
If I had any questions with her, just call her up on the phone. You know, it was very relatable, very personal. And, you know, with her getting to know my kids, you know, she got to kind of help guide me along the way. I mean, there were so many cool things that I've learned.
I went from a very rough type of life. I was homeless, and she was able to help me get into school, and I actually have enough credits to graduate with the business degree right now.
I think I really want to mention just that I'm grateful that I took advantage, because it's something that has put me in touch with my child, or closer to my child and her development.
I want other people and parents to know that the home visiting is not something that you should be afraid of. It's actually something that is needed.
You know, because she's not just here for her, she's here to help with all of it. She helped me create a safe space where I feel comfortable enough to ask for help.
Don't be afraid to take that step. Like, don't be afraid to get help. It's always okay to have extra support.
I would say, give it a try. You got nothing to lose. It's free. There's some perks, you know. They got great resources.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
Para mí también ha sido muy importante porque al no tener mi familia cerca, Gabriela me ha ayudado como a guiar esta parte maternal porque tampoco tengo amigas con hijos acá en el pueblo, entonces ella me ha dado como compartido su visión de la maternidad como algo muy íntimo, muy personal, entonces eso a mí me ha ayudado un montón como para guiar también la mía.
When I first realized that I was gonna be a parent, I was terrified. I am very far away from home. I don't have any family here, my family. I have my husband's family and my husband's family support. But I don't have my mom and my brother and my friends. When you find out that you're gonna have a baby, and then when you have the baby, you forget everything that you've learned, and it's kind of like you're starting all over with the whole learning thing.
We bonded so much because we, welcomed her into our home, and it was easier for me because, she was still, a small infant, and it's a lot of work when they're, that young. So I really appreciated that she was able to come in the home and support her emotionally.
I had wanted to be a mom for a long time, but I just didn't have any experience.
Muy sola, porque no tenía mi familia, porque no tenía amigos, desarrollé una depresión postparto, entonces como que lo pasé muy mal al principio, fue muy difícil y a veces incluso me costaba conectar con mi bebé, como jugar con él o tener más paciencia, eso me costó un poco, pero con apoyo de terapeuta, apoyo de Gaby, apoyo de amigas, creo que pude superar eso y ya hoy en día soy como una mamá más dedicada, igual también más informada y más consciente y amable conmigo misma para poder desarrollar mi maternidad. Porque si yo estoy bien, mi bebé va a estar bien.
And then Gabriella started coming over and I realized I've got someone to talk to. It was a saving grace, really.
The thing for me that actually wraps everything together and makes me feel so complete is that the home visitor that we have, she has taught me so much about babies and the stages that their brain go through, mental, physical, everything about children, and it just totally made me feel like I was the best mom in the world.
I realized that my life was going to change dramatically in ways that I did not know or understand or even comprehend. I was going to have to really go to the well and become accountable and adjust to a lot of things differently.
Que queríamos era que naciera, ya, sí, ya quiero tener, entonces ahorita lo que tenemos es aprovecharla, quererla y cuidarla lo más que se pueda.
Creo que a todos nos preocupa la primera vez que nos dicen que vamos a ser padres.
When we started the program, my daughter was about 3 months, and my daughter's 22 months now. Something I love about my child, that she's healthy, she's happy, she knows that she's cared for and loved. Those are some of the things that I wanted to make sure that she had, and she has them.
I'm happy today with my daughter. She's the greatest thing in my life, and I'm glad to wake up and see her, and everything I do it for her.
Sí, bueno, yo también vengo de una familia separada. Creo que por eso también me motiva a estar más presente con él, de quizás también estar de la forma quizás que yo no la tuve para Máximo. Y también comprender que el padre no solo es el que pone los límites y las reglas, sino que también está ahí para hablar, acompañar, regalonear, jugar, cosas lindas también, no solo ser el guía para el niño, sino que también un compañero de vida.
I was more of a elated and thankful because for 3 months I was in baby land, and when you're in baby world, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and hoping you know that you're just supportive in the ways that you can be supportive.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía, como cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien porque pues cosas que yo no sabía pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia, sino más bien un programa de estado programado para la ayuda solamente. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia.
All right. Good morning. The Mendocino County Planning Commission, May 4th, 2023 meeting is coming to order. And today's meeting is a hybrid meeting of the Planning Commission with participants both in person and digitally. The public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommission@mendocinocounty.org or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public after processing by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit public comments via telecomment, please use the telecomment form found at www.mendocinocounty.org/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. And can we have roll call vote?
Commissioner Jones?
Yes, here.
Commissioner Paulin?
Present.
Chair Wiedemann?
Yes, here.
Thank you.
Do we have, agenda item 2, do we have determination of legal notice?
And legal notice has been determined on each matter.
All right, thank you. And the director's report, do we have anything from the director's report this morning?
Good morning, Commissioners. Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. My main update for you is regarding the Planning Commission resolution that was the interpretation and clarification of county code related to short-term rentals. And that appeal was heard by the board on April 25th, at which time the board did uphold the appeal and essentially overturned the Planning Commission's resolution. So as it is presently, the requirements are as they were before. It's treated as room and board, and vacation home rentals are subject to a major use permit at minor use permit fees if you do not have frontage on a publicly maintained road. And the board did acknowledge wanting to address the issue and coming back essentially through zoning, either through the zoning code update or as a separate ordinance amendment to really focus on short-term rentals and vacation home rentals. That concludes my director's report. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to matters from public. Agenda item number 4. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so via email or Zoom. For information on these methods, call the Planning and Building Department at 707-234-6650 or visit www.mendocinocounty.org/government/planning-building-services/meeting-agendas. All correspondences will be attached to the item and made available online on the Planning Commission agenda page. If any members of the public logged into Zoom meeting and wish to speak under public expression and have not completed the telecomment form, please use the raise hand feature to allow staff to add you to the meeting. Instructions for using the raised hand features are found on the agenda for this meeting. Do we have any telecomments and public expressions at this time?
I have no telecomments, but I don't know about Zoom.
I do not see anyone on Zoom wanting to speak on this matter.
All right. With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar, item number 5. Do we have any public comment for this at this time for the consent calendar?
I do not have any.
Anything?
We have no public comment.
All right, thank you. And with that, we have moved the previous minutes for April 7th, 2022 and April 6th, 2023 to be approved. Do I have a motion?
I'll move passage of the minutes.
I believe it's passage of the consent calendar, is that correct? Yeah. I would second the motion to pass the consent calendar.
Yeah, but the only thing on the consent calendar was the minutes.
That's true.
So I second it.
Okay.
All right, can we have a
Commissioner
roll call?
Pollan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. So now we move into agenda item number 6A. It's our regular calendar. And what's before us is case MS 2019-0004, subdivision of a 44.08 acre lot into 2 lots, each 22.04 acres in size. This proposed subdivision is to accommodate a previously constructed residential dwelling unit that presently exceeds the maximum dwelling density for its zoning district. This proposed subdivision will bring the property into conformance with regard to the number of residential structures per lot. No further development is proposed. So I will open the public hearing. And do we have any correspondence or telephone calls received?
Everything that's been received has been posted to the internet.
Okay. And with that, can we have staff presentation, please?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Mark Kleiser, Planner 2, planner for this project. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to correct an error in the staff report. On page 2, paragraph 2, it is incorrectly stated that the average slope is 3.8%. That should read 30.8%. As noted, the project is a subdivision of approximately 44-acre parcel into 2 parcels of approximately 22 acres each. Project is located 7.5 miles southeast of the city of Willits on the west side of Westview Road, approximately 1 mile west of its intersection with Williams Ranch Road. It is addressed at 5600 Westview Road, Willits, parcel number 147-06113. The proposed subdivision is to accommodate a previously constructed residential dwelling unit that presently exceeds the maximum dwelling density in the zoning district. At present, there are 2 residences and 1 partially completed family residence on the 44-acre parcel. 1 house and the partially completed house are located on the northern half of the existing parcel, and this is accessible via its own driveway. Post-subdivision, this will be located on the northern 22-acre parcel. The southern portion of the existing parcel features a single-family home, a barn, and storage shed. This is also accessible via its own driveway, and post-subdivision, this will be located on the southern 22-acre parcel. The proposed subdivision will bring the property into conformance with regard to the number of residential structures per lot. A second single-family home will be permitted on the southern parcel should the applicant wish to do so. However, the applicant is not proposing additional development beyond completion of the second home on the northern parcel. The site features a mix of native and non-native grasses and some hardwood trees. However, the majority of the parcel is unforested. The project was referred to responsible agencies for comment. These comments have been incorporated into conditions of approval. There are no known rare or endangered species of flora or fauna on site, nor are there any wetlands located on the subject property. CDFW was contacted for comments, and they had none. An initial study was completed for the project in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and no significant impacts were identified. Therefore, a negative declaration was prepared. Future development could have some impacts. However, it has been determined that these would be less than significant. Since the resolution was prepared, staff has heard from the Department of Transportation regarding conditions of approval. It was determined that these conditions could be revised. As such, condition number 15, the last sentence now reads, "This section of existing private road shall be widened as much as possible to work towards the minimum standard." Then added was, "as determined by Mendocino County Department of Transportation staff." The last sentence of the second paragraph of condition number 15 has been deleted. And that sentence read, okay, perfect. The applicant did receive exception from CAL FIRE for standards regarding road width, roadway surface, roadway grades, roadway turnarounds, and turnouts. Little Lake Fire District, in a letter dated May 12, 2022, concurs with the CAL FIRE exceptions. However, Mendocino Department of Transportation has their own requirements regarding these standards, and those are reflected in conditions of approval number 15 and 16. Finally, a finding has been added to the resolution pursuant to section 66411.1 of the Subdivision Map Act. This new finding reads, this will be finding number 5. Pursuant to section 66411.1 of the Government Code, condition of approval numbers 15 and 16 would require the installation of improvements prior to the future issuance of a permit or other grant of approval for development of the parcels. The Planning Commission hereby finds that the improvements required by said conditions of approval are a necessary prerequisite to the orderly development of the surrounding area. Mendocino County Code Section 17-49 requires that adequate improvements shall be provided as may be necessary for improvement and design, as well as appropriate improved public roads. Mendocino County of Transportation has created road standards to allow for the efficient design, construction, and maintenance, and the standards result in a road system that meets current needs, allowing for orderly expansion. Staff recommends adoption of the negative declaration, approval of the minor subdivision as amended in today's hearing. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from my fellow commissioners to staff? Commissioner Jones?
Sorry, I'm realizing that you can't operate the mic if you have the document open on your page. That was the first one for me. Sorry about that. So I guess the question that I have has to do about the required improvements and the special conditions. Are those required because of the current development on the property?
Those are DOT standards. They are required as a part of the minor subdivision.
Let me phrase it a different way. If the property was currently not developed, if they were not doing a subdivision, would you require these improvements given the current level of development on the property?
If the, and Mark Kleiser, planner too, if the parcel was not developed and a minor subdivision was not.
No, so what I'm getting at here is with a minor subdivision, you, and I sent this information to the county attorney, that in a minor subdivision, you can only require improvements on a parcel if the current condition of development necessitates those improvements. You cannot require improvements for future development as part of a subdivision. So what I'm getting at here is the current level of development what's triggering road improvement?
No, it is the minor subdivision, and in the Subdivision Map Act, there is the section, if I may, this is 66411.1, that allows improvements, and if I may read from here, in the absence of an agreement, a local agency may require fulfillment of the construction requirements within a reasonable time following approval of the parcel map and prior to the issuance of a permit. And for the following reasons: 1, public health and safety, and 2, The required construction is a necessary prerequisite to the orderly development of the surrounding area.
So how does the improvement of this road affect the orderly development of the surrounding area? Wouldn't it only affect the orderly development of these subdivisions, of these two parcels?
This is a condition imposed by Department of Transportation. I'm not comfortable speaking to it. I believe Department of Transportation is here today, and they can speak to how their condition will add to the orderly improvement of the.
So, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gadrowski, just to add on to that, we've been having some discussion with this before the meeting and trying to figure out how the county has been implementing this section in our own MAP Act in the past and coming forward to today's meeting in response to the MAP Act section that you've called out previously. Here, within this subdivision, I think we might be looking at saying, reviewing the record, and if the finding is accurate, to say it's health and safety and not orderly development of the surrounding area. I'd have to talk with staff to see if the slopes are what would call for that. Otherwise, we're talking about, for both this subdivision and one more today, looking at, for the other one for sure, doing a continuance to look more into other agreements that we may want to be requiring to ensure conformance with that MAP Act section. Because there's a belief that, yes, it is important for these things to be done going forward, given that we're creating legal lots for sale in the future. So this particular project that we're looking at now, it is doing under a unilateral agreement. So there are standards in our code about what happens if they're seeking a waiver of a parcel map, and I think that does kind of provide some additional mechanisms for requiring conditions at this point in time. Looking through our MAP Act regulations, it is when.
Yes, they're entering into an agreement with you to do this. I get the unilateral agreement part. Yeah.
A unilateral agreement on its own has always been an interesting phrase as far as I've seen. But that being said, I think that would be one thing for our own code requirements, gets us to where, yes, we could look at requiring the road, because we think that in DOT had the condition, but of the requirements we have, drainage, grading, and street and other improvements shall be provided as may be necessary for traffic drainage or sanitary needs. So we can talk to DOT about the reasons they had for the condition, but in this instance, the unilateral agreement provisions of our code could allow for this construction to be required at an earlier point in time.
Right. Well, I just want to make sure that applicants understand what they're signing on to when they do that. For a project like this where I guess I just have a real problem with the county requiring applicants to do improvements for subdivisions where those improvements are actually not required until development happens. And that puts a pretty big financial burden on that applicant, especially a very steep road such as this, in a situation where that's not really what the MAP Act requires. And you're just getting into a kind of gray area that I think, yeah, you've been doing it for a long time, I understand that, but I think the law exists for a reason and we should follow it. So that's my point. Thank you.
All right. If I may, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director, I do just want to note that these properties are developed, and it looks like if you look at the first page of the staff report, it talks about that the subdivision is to accommodate a previously constructed residential dwelling unit that presently exceeds the maximum dwelling density for its zoning district as well. So it is developed with, I think, about 3 residences. Yes, thank you.
Right, and that's what I was getting at with my first question was, are you requiring this road because it's already developed, or are you requiring this road to support future development? And if you're requiring the road because it's already developed, totally game. That's correct. That makes sense to me.
And I'll just note for the record, we do have a representative from Department of Transportation available today as well, too, if the commission has any questions for them.
All right. I want to hear from Commissioner Paulin if he has any questions for staff.
No questions at this time.
All right. So I have a question in the sense of, since these parcels are already, well, not the parcels, but the housing's already developed, and the getting to the lower parcel, proposed parcel 2, with there's existing buildings there right now, and an existing road to this, would it be feasible for Department of Transportation, and this will be go to the next level when we speak to the Department of Transportation, to do turnouts, right? Fire road turnouts, you know, as an alternative to cost in the sense of every 300 feet in that if it's a fire issue. And you don't have to answer that, Mr. Planner, Mark, but what I need is, I want that question to be asked for Department of Transportation. And moving forward with that, let's hear from Department of Transportation.
So this is Jason. I'm with the Deputy Director of the Land Improvement Division here at DOT. So the fire department sent a letter saying that they're pretty well satisfied with the condition the roads are in. They did have a note in their letter that says to widen curves and roads as per direction from Fire Captain Josh Kitchens, which is not expressly stated what those widening of the curves in the road, what his directions are. But they did do a waiver for, not a waiver, they said they were doing exceptions for the requirements of road width in terms of the 10-foot minimum and other. So if there's a modification to be done that has something to do with turnarounds, which are for the fire department, I'm going to defer to their requirements and what they're asking for in those conditions.
Anything further from Department of Transportation?
The development, there's the current development, and then if there's two parcels, my belief or understanding is that those could each have two houses. So there is potential for future development as a result of this subdivision. So I think it's kind of a both to what you were referring to before, where it's both to meet current conditions and to provide for future development.
Okay. Any commissioners' question for Department of Transportation? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's have the applicant presentation.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, hi. Thanks. My name is Anna Summers. Thanks for hearing me today. I am speaking on behalf of all of the landowners for this parcel. As I stated in the email that I sent to you all, I do have issues with condition of approval 11, 15, 16. Since we've kind of been talking about 15 and 16 already, I'll go into that first. Regarding 15 and 16, requiring the widening of the road to 22 feet, adding 8 inches of base rock, double chip sealing grades above 16%, and creating an 80-foot diameter cul-de-sac at the terminus of the road. The cost for these road improvements is disproportionate to the impact the subdivision will have on the road. The cost that I have, or the estimated cost that I have from Garmin Construction for the improvements listed in 15 and 16 is at a minimum of $400,000 for a section of private road that is less than 2/5 of a mile long. Westview Road is adequately maintained for its current use by a very active and involved road associations, so improvements are not necessary. CAL FIRE has also exempted this subdivision from its own road improvement requirements, so improvements are not necessary. I'm asking that condition of approval 15 and 16 be removed from the subdivision conditions. Regarding condition 11, that requires 1,200 gallon proof of water test. I have not been shown a legal basis for the specific water quantity amount required in condition 11 based on Environmental Health Land Division Code 2609 as referenced in condition 11 language. The developed springs on site have more than adequate production for the current residences, and the property water storage capacity far exceeds environmental health recommendations. I'm asking that condition of approval 11 be removed from the subdivision conditions. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have about my concerns.
Are there any other applicant presentation?
I don't see anyone else attending.
Okay, then I'm going to take it to the commissioners. Do you have any questions for
I'm
the?
sorry, I do
Excuse me.
have one hand raised.
Okay, let's go back to applicant.
There we go. Hi, my name is Ruth Slocum on the on your calendar, and I just want to support Anna's work on this. She's gotten down into the nitty-gritties of it, and I'm appreciative of being here today and of this meeting, but I want you to know that I'm here when you asked, is there anybody else? So I can also maybe answer some questions as we are moving along. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So now I bring it back to the commission. If there are, Commissioner Jones, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Pesky little green button. I guess I don't really have any questions for the applicant. I guess I have more of an environmental health question to have some follow-up information about the water requirement, if there's a way of getting that at this meeting.
Yes.
Where that comes from.
Okay.
And I guess I do have an alternative question for the applicant. If it gets down to it, I'd like to hear if the applicant would be comfortable with us putting a special condition on this subdivision that doesn't allow additional single-family homes without proof of water and without the road improvements. So in other words, if you're comfortable going forward with your road as is and your water situation as is, but not allowing additional like second units or other development on the property until you address those things. I just want to hear your take on that.
Okay, and before you answer that, the applicant, I'm going to go to Commissioner Pollan for if there's any questions for the applicant.
I don't have any questions for the applicant. I do have some questions for staff about some things that the applicant raised. But I'd love to hear the applicant's response to Commissioner Jones's question as well.
All right, and I just have one other question for the applicant that you can answer. It ties into the water. How much capacity do you have stored for your water system now? And I then now take it back to the applicant for response.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so in response to the Jones question, obviously it's not my first choice, but yes, that is a compromise that I and the other land partners would be willing to make in order to move the subdivision along, since there is no additional development planned. So has that answered that question sufficiently?
And your capacity?
I'm hoping. Anyways.
And your water capacity right now on each parcel? Storage?
So the current storage capacity is 36,500 gallons.
Okay, thank you. I had one more question that I want to bring up, and it has to do with the road. I think if a turnaround at the bottom of the driveways are allowed, whether it's a hammerhead or the actual diameter required by CAL FIRES, it would be would be required. Would that work for you, for the applicant? Would that work for you, for the property?
So, first off, I have a letter from CAL FIRE saying that I would be exempt from that cul-de-sac turnaround for this project. We had, CAL FIRE staff come out, look at the road. They looked at it and said, yeah, all this is great. You don't need to do the turnaround, right? Like, it's not required for our services. I also have a letter that I sent to you. It's called the Connie Dixon letter. She is an adjacent landowner to the terminus of the road, and she gives permission for CAL FIRE to use the meadow that is down there. It's a flattened meadow for emergency access if necessary. So again, I'm not seeing the necessity perhaps for that turnaround, given that CAL FIRE already looked at everything and said, yeah, you don't need one.
All right, thank you. So now I'm going to go back. Is any other questions from the commission?
Not for the applicant, but again for staff.
Okay, we'll get there. I'm going to open it up for the public comment, and we'll hear public comment now. If there's any on telecomment or via Zoom.
I do not see anyone raising their hands for public comment.
All right. With that, then, let's go back to staff for final comments.
No final comments.
Okay, then I'm going to take it back. And any applicant, do you have any final comments?
Yes, I guess I do. Regarding 15 and 16, so we talked about anyways, regarding the road to either support current capacity or future development, I do have a letter. We did have a structural engineer come out to take a look at the road and do an assessment. He said that that I sent you in the documents from Kirk Vodapals. He said that the road conditions were very satisfactory, and that he recommended improvemments of road base and road surface grading, which have been done. You can find in the Westview High Point Road Association email, the one from February 27th, that kind of details a little bit about our road association and how it's run. It said that rock base, culverts, and full grading and rocking of roads are planned or have been completed. I also have the letter from the Westview High Point Road Association in support of this minor subdivision. It's stated in that email that says, we all agree that there would be no impact or adverse changes required for this proposed minor subdivision in regards to our road association and the maintenance of the roads with our road association. In fact, we would benefit from the proposed minor subdivision because it would add more money to our budget every year. And I suppose that is all that I have to say in addition. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to take it back to the commission.
Madam Chair, can you close public comment?
Oh, I will close. Public comment is closed. Thank you, Jim. Just moving too fast. So I'm going to take it back to the Planning Commission for any additional questions to both staff and applicant. Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Pollan.
Well, I think Commissioner Jones raised this question first, and it is on my mind too. That is about the requirement in condition 11 of the 1,200 gallon proof of water test. I'm curious where that comes from and if that is waivable or what our flexibility is on that particular condition.
Mark Kleiser, Planner 2. I can't speak to that, but we do have environmental health here today who can answer that question.
Thank you.
All right. May we hear from Environmental Health?
Good morning, Marlena Dooley, Environmental Health. Just a quick rundown. And I might ask, Mark, are you able to see your email? I sent you an email yesterday that has the sections of the land division code as well as the land division guidelines that require the department to require a proof of water of some kind for a parcel that's being proposed. Not all in here. Some is in 17. And the email I sent you has them. I don't have them all memorized. Basic, in Chapter 17, land division, when a parcel is proposed that is not supported by a public water or public sewer, the department is required to request documentation that is deemed adequate by the department that addresses the on-site water and on-site sewer. So that's the foundation of why there's that requirement in the first place, because this one is not supported by a water district. There are several different standards for meeting a proof of water. This specific one is our lowest standard, the inland 1,200 gallon. That form is the form that I can certainly provide if we want to take a break or pull it up on the internet, that explains to a qualified civil geologist, whomever, how to do the test on a well or on a spring. So I just want to clarify, because I think there has been some confusion about that. It makes allowances for how to meet the condition for wells or springs. The land division requirements speak to what the results would be required or expected should the applicant submit them. And this section that Mark has tabbed for me, which is in the County of Mendocino Land Division Requirements, page 42, chapter on water, 26.09, number 1, inland areas. All new land divisions, new land uses, and second residential units outside the coastal groundwater study area require a water quantity evaluation, except as noted above on a previous page, where development of on-site groundwater supplies are proposed. So that is where this condition's coming from. It's a standard condition. It is not for any other reason than they're proposing a subdivision that's not supported by a public water system.
Do I have questions from the commission?
Well, I have a follow-up.
Commissioner Pollan.
Yeah, a follow-up question, and thank you for that information. So I believe the applicant provided us some material of a water test that was done recently, a quantity study that indicated that they're generating somewhere in the 0.18 gallons per minute range, which would seem to be below that 1,200 gallons. Do we have any provisions that would allow this to take place with that quantity of water that is being demonstrated?
Environmental health we adhere to the results section of the land development division guideline requirements. The 1,200 gallons is a misleading, it's what we call it, it's what it's referred to in all of our language, but for a spring, it's not about 1,200 gallons. It's about gallon per minute from our overflow in the spring box. In the results section, it requires half a gallon per minute to a gallon per minute per proposed parcel, depending on the development. So the 0.1 does not meet either of those thresholds. The results section does allow for a cumulative addition of water tests. So if you had one well that only did 0.3, you could test another well that did 0.3 until you could get up to whatever it was you were trying to prove cumulatively. There is on record another water test that incorporated additional springs that I believe added up to 1.1 gallon per minute. It was from 2005. So in general, the department would want that reevaluated after about 10 years, those water tests. So it is possible, but it is not necessary. It is possible, but it is not necessary. So I just want to clarify, because I think there has been some confusion about that. It makes allowances for how to meet the condition for wells or springs. So that is where this condition's coming from. It's a standard condition. It is not supported by a public water system. So It seems to have been proven before. It is not currently what they submitted this year, but what they submitted this year does not include all of what was tested in 2005, and that's just informational. I wanted to also mention the storage. There's not an allowance in the results section that says so much storage can offset a lack of water. So the department does not approve applications based on storage. The Planning Commission, and maybe Director Krog or County Council could speak to that, has latitude in imposing conditions beyond staff's.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from Commissioner Jones?
Well, I guess I'm not sure if it's a question. It just seems like they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, with this project. Theoretically, they could keep testing until they found enough water to meet this requirement. It sounds like in 2005, someone did that and they were able to. So theoretically, it sounds like they could meet this requirement. In the event that they do not meet this requirement, the subdivision would be not denied, and what would be the consequence? And maybe this is a question for Julia, for the non-conforming structure, just so I understand like the full range of what could happen.
I may look to our planner, Mark Kleiser, too, who may have more history on the dates around that structure, because I'm just not sure when it was constructed, and that's going to be an important component.
Mark Kleiser, Planner 2. That's third unit now, because it's one parcel, is not completed. So it is a shell at this point. There is no kitchen or bathroom in it, though there are hookups in it. So at this point, it cannot be classified as a second dwelling unit or a third dwelling unit if the subdivision doesn't go through. There is the capacity to halt construction or change it and reclassify the structure as a barn or a shed or something else.
So just for clarity, the subdivision was pursued after there was a red tag on the structure? Is that what happened, or?
I don't know if it was red tag. There was no permits ever taken out
Got it.
for the structure.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question for environmental health. And so we know there's more storage capacity of water on this parcel, quite a bit. And we know this parcel has a pond, et cetera. If we were to limit the development of the second parcel, the creation of the second parcel to one dwelling, one resident, rather than it could have two residents or one resident and a ADU, so to speak, in the in that second parcel. So only one long-term resident. Would that have an impact on any of your work?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay.
So my requirement's based on the application for subdivision, not
Yes.
not based on
Right.
how much development is
Okay,
existing.
got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that answered it, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Yeah. Okay. So any further questions for staff from Commissioner Pollan?
Yeah, thank you. So Commissioner Jones had proposed a limitation that would not allow the construction of an additional dwelling. As I read it in the packet, if the subdivision went through as it currently is envisioned, it would allow for the creation of an ADU on each additional parcel, but not an additional primary residence. Is that correct?
Mark Kleiser, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was intending to say secondary unit.
Okay.
So
Right.
essentially, you leave it as is. It seems to be functioning okay, no harm, no foul, is one way of thinking about it. We're into the deliberation stage, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't jumping the gun. I can agree with.
Oh, wait, I have to, we're not yet.
We're not
So
yet.
we're still in the questioning staff. Any
Okay.
other questions from staff, from the commission?
Okay.
Just one other question. Do we have the latitude to strike conditions 15 and 16 regarding the road improvements as suggested by DOT?
If I may, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. So, of course, this Planning Commission does have the authority to modify conditions. I would just recommend that that be substantiated by a finding as to why those are not necessary, particularly since I understand this road has a relatively steep slope. I think it's 24% in some areas. And then I do think it's important that, and there is a condition already included there, that the applicant would be required to meet the exceptions to standards that were specified in the CAL FIRE letter. And one of those did include that they would need to widen curves and road as per direction from Fire Captain Josh Kitchens. And unfortunately, that's not quantified, so it's hard for me to know what that conversation entailed. But it does sound like there would be some road improvements regardless to meet CAL FIRE's requested standards to give them the exceptions to the slope.
The applicant indicated that she had a letter from CAL FIRE basically giving them the green light saying everything looks okay, but that seems in contravention to what we
Would you like me to share the letter on the screen right now?
That would be wonderful,
great.
thank you.
Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen here, and this is the exceptions to standards. And sorry, let me see if I can make it a little bit larger there. That come out, there we go. So you can see here, and if I scroll up, this was the CAL FIRE response basically saying that they have granted the request to the exception to the following standards, including the roadway width, the roadway surface, roadway grades, roadway turnarounds, and roadway turnouts. But they specified that it was being granted upon the following requirements. They say this is a one-time exception with the following restrictions. Identify turnouts and provide additional where reasonable. Also ensuring that the lettering, is properly marked with their standard requirements, any sort of address signs. Widen curves and road as per direction from Fire Captain Josh Kitchens. Additional fuels modification along the road to improve visibility. Add rock base when needed to maintain roadway surface to the agreement. And maintain road on an annual basis to adhere to this current agreement.
So if we're to utilize these exceptions or these restrictions, I'm just trying to think how we incorporate that into the approval here today. I mean, because we don't have specific road width recommendations, would it be basically conditioned upon approval from CAL FIRE?
Yes, if I may, condition 7 within the Exhibit A of the resolution includes that the subdivider shall comply with those recommendations, and the CAL FIRE letter specifies this letter and requires that written verification shall be submitted from CAL FIRE to the Department of Planning and Building Services that this condition has been met to the satisfaction of CAL FIRE. And that's required before the unilateral agreement would be signed and recorded, effectively creating the parcels.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comment or questions for both applicant and staff? That said, now I'm going to close the public hearing. And now it's before the commission, and I entertain a
If I may,
Yes.
you have a couple hands that have been raised from folks on Zoom. We have Department of Transportation has raised their hand, as well as the applicant has raised their hand.
Okay, so we're going to go back to not closing the public hearing, and we're going to have these hands that I can't see weigh in.
I would suggest we start with Department of Transportation, if that's acceptable.
Department of Transportation.
Yeah, in accordance with, this is Jason with DOT, with the letter granting exceptions from CAL FIRE, we're good with those exceptions. I would raise some caution about the steepness of the grade. CAL FIRE may be okay with that. They stated that if there was an emergency up there, they would just send one of their four-wheel drive vehicles with the off-road tires. And that's well and good for CAL FIRE, but an ambulance, a fire truck, a personal vehicle that may go down that road not realizing that it's too steep to get back up. It is a gravel road. In wet conditions, it would be very slippery. That's my only concern based on what CAL FIRE says. And CAL FIRE has their requirements. So for things like a turnaround, that's kind of exclusive to CAL FIRE, what they would be looking for. and same thing with some of the road widths. But I just want you to keep that in consideration, that other people use this road besides CAL FIRE that may have an issue with a grade in excess of 20%. That's our only comment. We're fine with deferring to CAL FIRE on the other matters.
Thank you. And there's another comment, public comment?
Yes, I see that the applicant has their hand raised. So Anna Summers, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Specifically to what DOT just said, my understanding with regard to like ambulance access is that most people out there have contracts with like the helicopters, emergency helicopters, because we are 30 minutes outside of town on dirt roads and all of that, that people depending on ambulance services isn't really reasonable in some regards. Also, I think all people on our property, the lower parcel, the upper parcel that we can call it, have used two-wheel drives almost exclusively for large portions of their time there, like Honda Civics Accords, that sort of thing, and they get up and down without difficulty. There's never been like an I'm stuck on the side of the road, can't get out situation. So that's somewhat of a subjective kind of information, but still possibly useful to what DOT is talking about with regard to access. So that speaks to DOT. Going back, I didn't realize I could raise my hand when environmental health was speaking, so I apologize for kind of bringing it back around. But so the pages that she was referencing in the land division requirements for their code do state that require a water quantity evaluation. It goes on to state what the elements of an inland water quantity evaluation are. And there are 5 different methods that can be used as per their code. The first one is a pump test method. The second one is a sustained yield method. The third one is a bale test method. The fourth one says certain sealed wells. All 4 of those have to do with wells, and all 4 of them have gallon requirements. The 5th method for an inland water quantity evaluation is a spring test. It reads, spring test may be acceptable under the following conditions. A developed spring must be located on each parcel. Each spring is adequately protected and not located in a defined drainage course. Water quantity is measured at the source where free-flowing water emerges to the surface, and spring tests must be performed during the dry summer months between August 20th and October 31st. Nowhere in the spring test conditions in their own code does it state a water requirement for a spring. There are lots of water requirements, gallon requirements for wells, but none for spring. She referenced the results section, stating that there's the 1 gallon per minute or like half gallon per minute kind of provisions. Those, as I read it, it says if a test well produces less than 1 gallon per minute, blah, 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 blah. Another well on a different parcel must be developed and tested, and if that well produces more than 1 gallon per minute, it will serve as proof of water. However, if that well is less than 1 gallon per minute, another well on a different parcel must be developed and tested. This procedure is continued until either a well with greater than 1 gallon per minute production is developed, or every parcel in the land division has 1 developed well on it with a minimum yield of 0.5 gallon per minute. It then goes on to say where wells or springs produce less than 5 gallons per minute, the Environmental Health Division recommends 2,500 gallons of storage. So again, I am confused and I do not see a legal basis for where their code states that my spring has to have a minimum that is stated in this code, that there has to be a minimum water, gallon per minute requirement. All of the water minimum requirements have to do with a well, and we do not have a well, we have springs. that is, I suppose, all I have to say about that.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to address that back to staff or county council to verify what the applicant was stating.
If I may, I think environmental health might be the most well-suited to respond.
Right.
And what I will do is I'm going to share screen with the regulations that were being referenced so we can look at all the
Thank
same.
you.
Orlando Dooley, Environmental Health. I would say that historically, all subdivisions for the last 25 to 30 years have been required to meet that result, and that springs have been allowed interchangeably when reading that. I suppose alternatively, then, so there's no way that the department cannot require a water quantity evaluation for this application. The department has accepted springs that produce the same gallon per minute as the results require of wells. If the department didn't, then the applicant would be required to drill a well to meet the requirement of the subdivision. So I don't know that that really behooves the applicant in this specific place. I could certainly work with county council. There's more than one place that the water quantity is required. There are other documents. There are requirements in Chapter 17, and there's also one more EH form that we could look at. I just say that past precedents for all second residential units and subdivisions that are supported by springs have been required to meet those gallon per minute.
All right. Do we have any other comments from staff at this time or county council?
If I may, Julia Krog,
Thank
Planning
you.
and Building Services Director. So there is discussion within Title 17, and I'm sorry I didn't quite have enough time to pull up the exact title reference, that does talk about ensuring that there's adequate water provided to subdivisions. So, it just brings about a question, and I think this commission has heard that before too, in times of, a spring is an excellent water source. However, it is, as are wells and reliance upon groundwater, there can be concerns over scarcity that happens in the future. So environmental health requirements are really intended to ensure that development is able to be supported and maintained long-term on these sites, and that, as part of doing a subdivision, ensuring that there is adequate water for both the needs of the site now as well as the future needs for the additional density that's been authorized through a subdivision. So, of course, this commission does have the authority to decide either that you find that the water demonstration has been acceptable and not require additional analysis, but I just wanted to frame it in that way to also think about, that it's not just for the development that's there, but also the future potential development that could be established on this site as a result of the subdivision.
I have the applicant raising her hand.
All right, let's hear, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, thank you. So, environmental health stated that well and spring can be used interchangeably and has been used interchangeably in the past. I also looked at the Mendocino County, California Code of Ordinances. In their definitions section, they have separate definitions for spring and wells. Spring means a flow of water from the earth, which occurs spontaneously where the water table stratum emerges to the surface of the earth. A well means a water well, monitoring well, or cathodic protection well. And also in their own document, this land division requirement, document 2609, it does not use well or spring interchangeably within the document that has been revised several times since it was written in 82. So there were multiple times that the county could have written in a gallon requirement for a spring. There were multiple times that they could have used interchangeable language, saying a well or spring must produce, a well or spring must produce, but it is very specific. It is very specific. It is listed 5 instances and methods that water quantity evaluations can be used, and a spring is a specific method you listed in that contains its own conditions, none of which include a gallon per minute requirement. The first paragraph on page 34 of their land division requirement, water supply system, water quantity, a primary requisite for the creation of new lots or land uses centers on the availability of a water supply to provide safe and adequate water for domestic purposes. Then we go on to say the water quantity evaluation subsection, the first paragraph states, the degree and type of water quantity test differs depending on the applicable land use, type of water source, and type and location of project. So they say within their code that the water quantity test differs depending on the water source. Now, I don't understand how now she's saying that all of these words, well and spring, can be used interchangeably, where in their own document, they define that the water quantity test differs based off of water source. They define then the methods for how to test specifically for those water sources with gallon per minutes and all sorts of equations and everything. Yet when it comes to the spring test, there is no water minimum requirement. It is just that a water quantity test must be performed on a spring that meets certain conditions, which our property meets all of those conditions for a spring test. Also, there's a question of adequacy, right? The intent is to prove adequate water supply. I understand, accept, and support that. Adequate water supply, as defined in Environmental Health Document 2609, water testing, adequate water is defined as a water source is considered adequate when the source/sources has sufficient yield to meet the estimated maximum daily water demand. Currently, our property, let me find my notes. During the dry summer months, which is what, August, September, October, something like that, as defined by environmental health, our property, each household used 133 gallons per day. That was our maximum use during the dry summer months. Our wells, so environmental health referred to a previous water test that was done in 2005 that included multiple wells, right? Our wells, we had what?
Excuse me, to the applicant. I think you're exceeding a certain timeline, and can you just wrap up your last statement on the water, please?
Sure, I apologize. I got kind of on a roll.
Yeah.
I believe that our springs prove adequacy. Only one spring or 2 springs were tested. We had a 3rd spring that doesn't meet the qualifications currently that ran at 0.25 gallons per minute. So total with all springs that we tested was 0.43 gallons per minute, which is 619 gallons per day. During the dry summer months, our property only used less than half of what was generated by those springs.
Okay, so thank you very much for your input on the water. I understand it's complicated, and now I'm going to move back to the commission for any other questions, or to staff to give any other feedback regarding any points that were brought up during this hearing here. Commissioners, seeing no further questions, I just had one question. How many properties are beyond this? This deals with the road. How many properties that are residential properties are beyond this subdivision?
Mark Kleiser at Planner 2. Approximately 2.
Okay.
I take access from that road.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing that commission has no further comment, is there any further comment from staff? Seeing that there's none, I'm closing the,
Pardon me. You have a hand up from Department of Transportation on Zoom.
Okay. All right, we go back to Department of Transportation.
Thank you. This is Jason with DOT. So really quickly, in response to the traction problem, smaller cars, front wheel drive vehicles do all right on that road. When we were out there, it was kind of a damp day, and we have a rear wheel drive pickup, and we lost traction and had to put it into 4-wheel drive to get up the 24% slope. We are not, we can come back on the requirement of trying to ease that slope, but improving the surfacing with a chip seal or double chip seal would greatly help traction in a situation such as that. As long as people who live down it know what they're getting into, that's one thing. And if no one has any concerns, then that's the commission's decision on that one. And then a quick note would be that I believe, even though there are only a few lots beyond this proposed subdivision, I believe each of those could be subdivided in the same way that this one is. Again, increasing the use on the road. Just a couple things for consideration, and I believe that's all we have on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I am going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to bring it back to the commission for and invite a motion, if I may.
Can we have discussion before we go to a motion?
We can.
Yeah, just because I'm not sure if we have agreement and we could waste some time on motions.
Well, we could make a motion, then have discussion.
Just pardon me, I just want to note for the record, one of the owners does have their hand raised now. You have closed it, so it is up to you whether or not you wish to hear that comment.
No, I'm not going to open it. I think that's good.
I think we've gone back and forth
Yeah,
between a lot of
enough.
people, a lot more than we normally do in a public hearing on this project. So when I think about this project, I'm not too concerned that the code doesn't explicitly require that springs have 0.5 gallons per minute, because obviously it's understood that residences need that level of water. And so even though the code may not explicitly state it, I am comfortable with that as a requirement. It also appears to me that in the past, this site has been able to show that level of water. So, and if they have to dig another well, then they can probably do that. So I'm okay with keeping special condition 11 as written. So if I were to make a motion, the motion that I would do would be to probably strike condition 16. And for condition 15, I'm open to what the other commissioners think. I feel like there's two ways of handling it. One would be to limit development with a special condition on these two parcels to what's currently existing. And so you're kind of leaving it as the same condition. I'm not sure that gets the applicant what they want, because they have a half-built house that I'm assuming they want to finish. And given that they did that without permits, and so that's sort of 2 notches down for them. What about if we require not a 22-foot wide road, but an 11-foot wide paved road with current grade, with turnouts, so that would allow for future development, would allow people to get out of the way of emergency vehicles. I don't think you need 22 feet of, paved road. And then if the other parcels further down the road want to subdivide later, they could finish the job, which is actually fairer from a finance perspective. That still leaves the applicant probably dishing out over $200,000 in road improvements. But I feel like that's somewhat of a compromise in a kind of sticky situation, and that's what I'm throwing out for consideration.
Commissioner Pollan?
Thank you, Chair Wiedemann. Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Personally, I feel inclined. I understand the requirement for the minimum water production, and I think there's a certain illogical nature to say that it shouldn't be treated that way because it's a spring instead of a well. But I also think that the condition exists so that it is clear that there will be sufficient water there for the anticipated need. And I think the applicant has demonstrated at this point that for at least for the current usage of the property that exists. So I would feel more inclined that if we are to put the special condition in place that does limit this property to not develop any additional secondary units, that they would be fine to maintain the water as it is right now, and that if they were to want to develop additional units, that then they would need to demonstrate that there's sufficient water to meet those needs. As it relates to conditions 15 and 16, personally, I feel inclined, based on what we've heard from the applicant and the sort of the length of the road and the information that we have from CAL FIRE, to strike conditions 15 and 16, but to make sure that the conditions that are listed in, I guess, is it seven, are upheld, because it feels like that addresses the concerns that CAL FIRE might have. So that's how I would be inclined to proceed at this time.
All right, and just for finishing out the discussion, I would like to give this parcel an opportunity, the second parcel they're creating, to have, full build-out if they can meet the needs, which would mean at this point they would have to find another well or have that spring box cleaned out and perform better, whatever that is. Even though I do appreciate you have a lot of storage, and that's fabulous for fire season, etc. So I concur that I would like to keep to get the density. You're doing the work to get the density for this new parcel, which would allow basically, a full residence and a second ADU residence. And then I could go with the fire on number 7 and 8 that was presented by our Julia Krog from the fire district of improvements. Now, as far as the road goes, I do think it's an issue. Because what I hear from Department of Transportation, I wanna honor what they're sharing with us, that there is a steep grade, and I'm trying to figure out how to allow this to happen that's not gonna be too exorbitant in cost, because it's not like you're subdividing for 4 parcels. You're really just creating another one, and you have 2 other parcels at this point that may be split again. And so I don't know if there's a less expensive way other than, we can do the fire for the road, but is there another way? And I concur with Commissioner Jones. Can we improve the road? And maybe it's just a chip seal and not asphalt. I'm not quite sure, what would give it, the secure traction. But I'm open to figuring out how to do this road situation in order to allow them to go forward with the subdivision.
So one thing we could require, I'm on, right? is that they apply dust off every year. And dust off is used all over county roads and private roads. And what it does is it seals the dirt and rock together so that you don't get the spinning action on your tires. It also makes your grading last a lot longer. That would probably be cheaper overall, so we could go with number 7 and then add to that the requirement to apply dust off every year. I also agree, I'm more in the pro-housing perspective, so the idea of turnouts, dust off might get us more there. I also respect the fact that Department of Transportation has their passion, and I appreciate the passion and the need to improve roads. I also am just conscious that you're doing a lot, very expensive improvements for a pretty small subdivision, and that's part of the challenging part here, just with the economics of it.
And with that, Commissioner Pollan?
Well, I just note that Department of Transportation has their hand up again, so we might want to hear from them at some point. But I guess my other question is sort of a procedurally one, is that if we were to impose that kind of condition, I'd be curious just today to hear from the applicant if that's something that would be acceptable to them before we impose that kind of that condition. I mean, I guess we could.
No.
Well,
It's not that expensive. It's like $2,000 a year.
Well, the dust
for a
off
road.
the dust off one feels less so. I mean, doing some sort of a chip seal or the turnouts feels like a bigger.
No, it's half of what Department of Transportation would be requiring because you're doing half the distance. But I'm fine with chip seal and not doing fine with dust off and not doing chip seal, just because it's such a small amount of development.
Yes.
So maybe we can do a motion.
Well, we could do a motion. Do we still have the hand up for department, even though I closed public?
The commission can certainly ask a question of Department of Transportation if you'd like to. They do have their hand raised.
Sure.
What's your question or comment?
I wanted to clarify that the chip seal would only be in the portions of the road over 16% in grade, not for the entire road. I wanted to make that clarification since that's the major difference in quantity. And also, if the width of the road is being reduced, the cost estimate was for 22-foot wide road, I believe. And if it was down to 11, that would effectively cut the cost, probably take 30% off the cost. I just want to make those two clarifications that we're not recommending full road chip seal just for the steepest portions.
And the steepest, and what grade are you talking about, more or less?
Usually it's in excess of 16%.
Okay.
And when you say 30% off the cost, you're saying a 30% reduction in the estimate. There's a $400,000 estimate that the applicant put out. So you're saying it would be 30% less than that?
The paving requirement alone was 193,000, and I don't know if that paving specified is asphalt or a double chip seal.
So if we assume that it was asphalt, I'm just saying it would be a great reduction. I couldn't say it was half because it's half the quantity, because a large part of construction costs come from mobilization, demobilization, and if you do larger quantities, a lot of times you get less cost. But I just wanted to clarify that those were, when I was talking about chip seal before, it was only for the steepest portions, not for the entire length of the roads,
right,
or anything like that.
But just so we have a fair, like a rough figure in our head. I mean, if it's a 30% reduction, it's still a $280,000 potentially cost to the applicant.
Well, I think it would be. I'm talking about just the paving portion, which was stated as being 100 and for 48,000 square feet of paving, it has $193,600 as the estimate. So I'm saying off of that amount,
Right,
I would
30, but
think
it's
a
still
30% reduction.
30% off of 193 is even less of a reduction than 30% off of 349. So
Indeed, I'm just going through accuracy.
Right. Great. I just want to make sure that we're all looking at the same figures.
Yeah, and then yes. So that was my clarification. Anna has something to respond, I'm sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Chairman, County Council.
Yes, may we hear from County Council?
Deputy County Council Matthew Kudrowski. Now, this isn't a DOT issue. It was before the commission makes a motion. One of the ideas having contemplated was limiting development to what's on site. And if that is something the commission wants to continue on doing, I might recommend that we continue this for some research on that, because there's state law regarding ADUs that allow for an additional unit per parcel. I'm not sure we could adopt a condition here that would restrict that and limit that to right now. I'd want to clarify that before we made a motion on that.
Thank you. The motion was, what I was actually considering was only requiring these improvements when ADUs got approved at a future time, so.
I just want to get my point out there on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with your point.
And pardon me, you may be hearing in the room a little clicking, so if folks can just check the location of their cell phones in relation to the microphones, because it will cause a clicking sound if your cell phones are too close to the microphones. Thank you.
Chair Wiedemann, I do have the applicant hand raised.
Yeah, well, I closed the, we're in the final motion, so no, we're not opening it up. So now I'm going to entertain a motion from my fellow commissioners.
There you go. Well, I guess I just want to follow up on Deputy County Counsel's comment there. Would we need to have some further analysis about whether or not this motion is being contemplated as legal or not before we?
I think at this point, both Weed and I would prefer to see the housing, so I think that's been dropped.
Okay, so you're saying you're not in favor of the special condition that you initially proposed at this point?
Only, I put it out there as an idea, only to like sort of keep things as is, if that was a way that people were going, but it seems more like we're in more of a pro-housing perspective. It doesn't really solve the problem for the applicant because they have this half-finished third unit, which is why they came in for the subdivision to begin with. So I'm more on the road of special condition 7 and whatever you guys can come to agreement on the other
Water.
road improvements.
Right.
I'm fine with dust off, but
Okay.
whatever. And then, yeah, they've got to prove water.
So can I get a motion, please?
I'm going to let Commissioner Jones make this motion because I think she's got something in mind.
Oh, well, I don't know. I'll try. Let me see if I can find that staff report on my screen again. Sorry. I go all the way to the end. So I move that we approve subdivision application MS 2019-004, the resolution of the Planning Commission adopting the negative declaration for a minor subdivision with the following special condition changes. And these include striking special condition 16 and modifying special condition 15 such that the road width would be as defined in special condition 7, but the road finish would include the application of dust off.
On an annual basis?
On an annual basis.
And what about special condition 11?
I think we just leave it as is.
Do I have a second so we can have discussion?
You can make an
Well,
alternative.
I would, yeah.
No,
I mean,
wait.
Okay.
I'll pass and make a second if you're not willing, right now.
Okay, great. I'm not gonna second that
Okay,
motion.
so I'm going to pass the chair to you, Cliff. I have to do that. And I will make a second in order that we have discussion on this motion that was made by Commissioner Jones. And with that, the discussion I have is, I think this is the compromise. I do think they're creating another parcel. We want to, the goal here is to honor that they have the zoning to create another parcel, create a house and an ADU. If you have to drill another well, or make sure you meet the water recommendation that we are putting forth in this condition, so be it. I'm comfortable with that, because I think that's fair. And I think by limiting and reducing the constraints to the road and will make it also more affordable. So that's my reasoning.
Let's hear what you think.
Well, I think that's all very logical and reasonable. I guess my concern is that I mean, as I'm understanding this right now, the subdivision won't actually take effect until they can demonstrate that they have 1 gallon per minute of production.
2 years.
For 2 years, right?
Produce, to come up with the findings.
Right, is that correct?
Yes, subdivision approvals are valid for 2 years. That timeline to complete the conditions can be extended up to 36 months with 2 different 18-month fee-based extensions based within our code.
Okay, so basically we're putting the clock to say they have to develop an additional water source in the next 5 years.
Right.
Okay. Okay, I can live with it.
If I may, I would like to ask just a couple clarifying questions so we can write up, then I would ask for a break so we can write up the revisions to condition 15. So I just want to make sure my notes were correct from the motion from Commissioner Jones. So that was to have condition 15 as it's presently written struck and replace it with a revised condition that would require that the subdivision road be improved to the width as specified within condition of approval 7, and a requirement to treat the road with dust off.
Annually.
Annually. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had that clear. So we're striking the requirement on the slope and the width standard in 15. Okay, perfect, thank you. And then I understood striking condition 16, and that was the remainder of the changes.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Then staff would ask for a 10-minute
Yes.
break so we can write that up.
And thank you very much, staff, and the public, and the applicant. And we're going to now take a 10-minute break. So we will resume at 10:45.
When I first realized that I was going to be a parent, I was super scared. After 2 or 3 weeks of meeting in the home visiting program, I was totally comfortable with the fact that I was going to have a baby. Yes, I was still scared, but at the same time, I felt like I had some sense of strength behind me.
If I didn't have those resources that Jeanette provided me, I think it would be harder now.
I got into the program and I realized, like, oh, this is nice. And now look at me. I work at a family resource center with parents and families, all this stuff.
I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to meet my home visitor, because without her, I think that I would be 10 steps behind from where I'm at right now.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía. Cómo cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien, porque pues cosas que yo no sabía, pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
I don't know what's normal for a 22-month-old baby or an 18-month-old baby, you know. When we get together, we usually discuss and get some progress made with the baby. It makes me feel comfortable, and I associate my parenting with her, my home visitor, telling me, yeah, this is going great.
So it's nice to know where they're at, what stage they're at for every parent, and also to give, again, your children that head start in education.
If I had any questions with her, just call her up on the phone. You know, it was very relatable, very personal. And, you know, with her getting to know my kids, you know, she got to kind of help guide me along the way. I mean, there were so many cool things that I've learned.
I went from a very rough type of life. I was homeless, and she was able to help me get into school, and I actually have enough credits to graduate with the business degree right now.
I think I really want to mention just that I'm grateful that I took advantage, because it's something that has put me in touch with my child, or closer to my child and her development.
I want other people and parents to know that the home visiting is not something that you should be afraid of. It's actually something that is needed.
You know, because she's not just here for her, she's here to help with all of it. She helped me create a safe space where I feel comfortable enough to ask for help.
Don't be afraid to take that step. Like, don't be afraid to get help. It's always okay to have extra support.
I would say, give it a try. You got nothing to lose. It's free. There's some perks, you know. They got some great resources.
Personally, I think everybody could benefit from the home visiting programs.
para mí también ha sido muy importante porque al no tener mi familia cerca, Gabriela me ha ayudado como a guiar esta parte maternal porque tampoco tengo amigas con hijos acá en el pueblo, entonces ella me ha dado como compartido su visión de la maternidad como algo muy íntimo, muy personal, entonces eso a mí me ha ayudado un montón como para guiar también la mía.
When I first realized that I was gonna be a parent, I was terrified. I am very far away from home. I don't have any family here, my family. I have my husband's family and my husband's family support. But I don't have my mom and my brother and my friends. When you find out that you're gonna have a baby, and then when you have the baby, you forget everything that you've learned, and it's kind of like you're starting all over with the whole learning thing.
We bonded so much because we, welcomed her into our home, and it was easier for me because, she was still, a small infant, and it's a lot of work when they're, that young. So I really appreciated that she was able to come in the home and support her emotionally.
I had wanted to be a mom for a long time, but I just didn't have any experience.
Muy sola, porque no tenía mi familia, porque no tenía amigos. Desarrollé una depresión postparto, entonces como que lo pasé muy mal al principio, fue muy difícil y a veces incluso me costaba conectar con mi bebé, como jugar con él o tener más paciencia. Eso me costó un poco, pero con apoyo de terapeuta, apoyo de Gaby, apoyo de amigas, creo que pude superar eso y ya hoy en día soy como una mamá más dedicada, igual también más informada y más consciente y amable conmigo misma para poder desarrollar mi maternidad. Porque si yo estoy bien, mi bebé va a estar bien.
And then Gabriella started coming over and I realized I've got someone to talk to. It was a saving grace, really.
The thing for me that actually wraps everything together and makes me feel so complete is that the home visitor that we have, she has taught me so much about babies and the stages that their brain go through, mental, physical, everything about children, and it just totally made me feel like I was the best mom in the world.
I realized that my life was going to change dramatically in ways that I did not know or understand or even comprehend. I was going to have to really go to the well and become accountable and adjust to a lot of things differently.
Que queríamos era que naciera, ya, sí, ya quiero tener, entonces ahorita lo que tenemos es aprovecharla, quererla y cuidarla lo más que se pueda.
Creo que a todos nos preocupa la primera vez que nos dicen que vamos a ser padres.
When we started the program, my daughter was about 3 months, and my daughter's 22 months now. Something I love about my child, that she's healthy, she's happy, she knows that she's cared for and loved. Those are some of the things that I wanted to make sure that she had, and she has them.
I'm happy today with my daughter. She's the greatest thing in my life, and I'm glad to wake up and see her, and everything I do it for her.
Sí, bueno, yo también vengo de una familia separada. Creo que por eso también me motiva a estar más presente con él, de quizás también estar de la forma quizás que yo no la tuve para Máximo. Y también comprender que el padre no solo es el que pone los límites y las reglas, sino que también está ahí para hablar, acompañar, regalonear, jugar, cosas lindas también, no solo ser el guía para el niño, sino que también un compañero de vida.
I was more of a elated and thankful because for 3 months I was in baby land, and when you're in baby world, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and hoping that you're just supportive in the ways that you can be supportive.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía, como cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien porque pues cosas que yo no sabía, pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
Bueno, creo que por mi parte esperaba algo totalmente diferente, como un programa más frío, por decir algo, no tan cercano a la familia, sino más bien un programa de estado programado para la ayuda solamente. Y a través del programa nos hemos dado cuenta que también pasa a ser una familia con nosotros, porque nos apoya en los momentos difíciles o cuando nos hemos visto en dificultades. Siempre nos hemos podido apoyar en Gaby a través de su programa. Encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
My experience has been nothing but positive. Annette has been wonderful. She's on time. She lets me know if there's going to be any changes in the schedule.
Not only did we get the assistance with this program, but we also made a really good friend.
Planning Commission, Mendocino, we're resuming our meeting at 11:47. And, 10:47, thank you. Jeez, it felt like an extra hour was in there, but 10:47. So do we have the motion revised now? Yes, the resolution, thank you.
Mark Kleiser, Planner 2. So yes, we have removed the finding number 5, and we have gone down to the conditions and amended number 15. So now it will read, Westview Road between the driveway approach to Parcel 2 and High Point Road shall be approved in accordance with CAL FIRE requirements per condition of approval number 7. The road shall be treated annually with a dust suppressant. Annually, the applicant shall submit to the Department of Planning and Building a letter verifying the date of dust suppressant treatment. The second paragraph of that condition has been deleted, and as has number 16. And those are the conditions as changed.
All right. Okay, so with those changes, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Wiedemann, I'm sorry, Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones
Yes.
and Commissioner Pollan.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. And now we move on to our agenda item 6B. And
Pass the gavel back. You pass the gavel.
oh yes, you have to give me the gavel back.
Here you go.
Okay, thank you. I forgot to give this to you. Okay. All right, there's really a gavel now. Okay. So, taking the gavel back, we're going to move on to item on our agenda 6B, and it is case MS 2020-0005, minor subdivision of a 34.92 plus or minus acre parcel, creating 4 parcels ranging in size from 5.08 to 8.05 acres, with a remainder parcel of 11.59 acres. And I'm going to open the public hearing and ask if there's any correspondence or telephone calls or telecommunications.
Any items have been posted to the web, to the public website.
Okay, great. And may we have staff presentation now, please?
And if I may, Chair Wiedemann, so for this item, I will note before we do any staff presentation, so there are some there's road conditions in this one as well. And these are more substantive road conditions than what you saw even in the prior project. So given the conversation here today, staff is will be asking essentially for a continuance to be able to work through the timing of those subdivision road conditions. Now, I do see that the applicant is on Zoom here, so the commission does have a choice to say, you know, whether or not to grant a continuance now, proceed with the staff presentation, provide any direction to staff, but staff would be requesting to have a continuance before coming back with final conditions for this project, because we think there is going to be a need to do some revisions at minimum to the timing of those conditions.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to just, instead of hearing the staff presentation, if we're going to continue, that's what you're saying. If we're going to continue it, we should continue it. And I know the applicant is online, I guess, online, Zoom. What I want to do is just ask my fellow commissioners what they would like to do here.
I'd prefer just to wait and hear from the applicant and the staff presentation all at the time when the conditions have been modified and we have it all in front of us at one time.
Okay, and Commissioner Jones?
I guess I just, I assume you're thinking it because the conditions are similar. I mean, I don't see the conditions as quite the same because you're making so many more parcels, but I don't know.
If I may, there's sort of two options I see here today. Right. So the commission can hear the staff presentation, hear from the applicant, and then also consider giving direction to staff on any conditions of approval and such. But staff just does want to take that time to review for consistency with the Subdivision Map Act as well as our land division regulations to ensure that the timing of those conditions of approval for road improvements are, appropriate and accurate. And I do know that there have been some comment letters submitted on this particular project too, with discussion about road improvements. So, but the applicant, as I said, is available on Zoom, so you may wish to hear from them as well.
I prefer myself to wait until we have your revisions and your check and balance with the issues that came before us at the first item that we heard. So I would not open it up. I would just, let's pass this to, if you're going to reschedule this at a future date.
We would request this be continued to a date certain, and I'm going to suggest the first meeting in June of the commission.
All right.
Yeah, and so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, County Council, but I think you actually have to open the public hearing and then continue it. We can't just not do anything.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I'm not sure we have to open the public hearing for public comment on the staff report. If we want to hear from the applicant, if they're in the room to see if they have a concern with that date, that would work fine. Or if they have a concern about a continuance, but realistically, that's all I think we'd have to do. So we can open the public hearing to ask the applicant if they have a concern about the continuance.
So public hearing's open, and let's speak with the applicant since they're online to see if that date being scheduled is available to them.
It should be fine. What was the exact date? I heard the first week in June.
Pardon me, it is June 1st is the exact day.
Okay, yeah, no, that should be fine. And I mean, I know you guys don't want any comment, but the only thing I do have to say is about the roads is that it's a really, really, really well-maintained road as far as dirt roads go. Literally hardly any slope at all. I feel like having to double chip seal it is a little bit extreme. But other than that, that's my only comment.
All right. And thank you. And with that, I guess I could entertain a motion to carry it over.
And that would, the request of staff would be continue the item to a date certain of June 1st.
Yes, okay. So
I move that we continue this item to the date certain, June 1st.
Second that motion.
roll call, please.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones, Chair Wiedemann.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Now that moves us to agenda item number 6C, case MS 2022-0003, minor subdivision of an existing 214-acre parcel into 2 parcels and 1 remaining parcel. Parcel 1 would be 56.77 acres. Parcel 2 would be 40 plus or minus acres, and the remainder parcel would be approximately 118.44 acres. So I'm going to open public hearing, and I'm going to see if we have anybody on telecommunication or correspondence.
And all correspondence have been posted to
Oh.
the website.
All right. And now I'm going to ask staff report.
Give me just a moment here to pull up.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
So thank you for bearing with us on our technical difficulties. We'll get the mic up and running here.
That's fine.
All right, you can hear me all right? Okay. Thank you. This is Liam Crowley, planning staff, presenting the staff report for this project. As stated, the applicant is requesting a minor subdivision of approximately a 214-acre parcel into 2 parcels and 1 remainder parcel. Staff found the project to be consistent with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, and the County Division of Land Regulations as is detailed in the staff report. On July 28, 2022, the project was referred to various relevant agencies, and those comments are included in the staff report. I did also want to note that additional responses were received from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on March 8th and CAL FIRE on March 21st. CDFW did not have any comments on the proposed subdivision, and CAL FIRE provided letter number 31-23. And I'll get into some revisions based on that letter from CAL FIRE in a moment here. So the project was reviewed by the Mendocino County Subdivision Committee at their meeting on November 10th of 2022, and the committee recommended conditional approval of the subdivision. I did prepare a memo which was posted on the website and was shared with commissioners. If any of you didn't receive that, I do have hard copies as well. If you'd like, I can hand those out. The memo includes some minor additions to the resolution, including the required fire safety findings and a condition of approval memorializing the recommendations from CAL FIRE. As I said, CAL FIRE did submit their comments based on the applicant's application to CAL FIRE. They didn't have any requirements for the proposed subdivision, but they did ask that any future development have an additional application made to CAL FIRE. And then in accordance with CEQA, staff prepared an initial study for the project and found that it would have no significant impacts on the environment with mitigation measures incorporated, and therefore a mitigated negative declaration was prepared. And for the record, at this time, I would like to note a few corrections to the initial study. So on page 52 of the initial study, under the discussion section, the first 4 sentences of that paragraph should be struck. They refer to Highway 1, and the project, of course, is not located on Highway 1, and those were just erroneous information. And then under that same paragraph, in the last sentence, the acronym LCP should be struck and then changed to general plan. That was also just an erroneous inclusion of the LCP when it should be the general plan. There was a public comment received from Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Council on March 21st. That was posted to the website. And if you'd like me to go over any concerns from that comment, I'd be happy to. So to close, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the mitigated negative declaration as corrected by staff and grant the minor subdivision based on the facts and findings subject to the conditions of approval in the revised resolution that's in the memo that was provided. So that's all I have. I'm available for any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions for staff from the commissioners? And I'm going to go Commissioner Pollan.
Thank you, Chair Weedman. I was just looking at the comments received from the Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory Council. And I assume that most of their concerns have been addressed. There was one in there that stood out as something unusual, which was there was a request for some prohibition on the sale of water off the site, and I was curious if that is contemplated or where that concern came from, and if so, how that would be addressed by staff in their recommendations.
Yeah, planning staff, this is Liam Crowley. Yeah, as far as where that came from, I'm not sure. That was just a comment from Redwood Valley MAC, but as far as the county goes, I know that Mendocino County has a water haulers ordinance that requires essentially a permit process for someone intending to, I would assume, take water from their own property and it to somewhere else and sell it. But other than that, I'm not aware of any mechanism that the county has to limit extraction from what would in this case be private wells or a spring. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I just have a comment on the CEQA document. It's just educational. So in the checklist part, if you note that there is a potentially significant impact with mitigation, usually you have to have a mitigation measure to correspond to that. So just in the future when you do your checklists, if you don't have a mitigation measure, you should say what's the term? No significant impact should be the box you check. And it's very easy to go through first and not go back and check. So just a reminder to do that. Not that it matters, but if you want to be perfect.
Was there any other comment, questions from staff? Do you have a capability to put up the site plan in the staff report on the screen? And that was the site plan with the topo. It would be, yes, by the civil engineering. Do you have that we could put up on the screen?
I can share that on the screen if you give me
Thank
just a moment.
And where I'm going here, and this is because what really happens, even I went online and tried to blow it up on my screen, and I kind of look at these site maps often. I think the scale of this map needs to be, really should have been bigger, personally. I mean, for us to even zooming in and going into it. Because here's where the question I have is where they're proposing the house and the septic systems, right? Along between the road and the river, right? I couldn't see what any distance is, right? Any like how far are we away from these, roads and waterways? And that was, I felt, kind of lacking for me, trying to figure out what's going on there, right? So what I have is I have a steep grade at one point on one parcel. I think it's the lot 2 of 175 feet grade change on one, and then I have 850 grade change on one, and then I have a 750 elevation change. And I'm going from the steepest down to the less. And it's interesting that there's no topo lines. And if you go even to a GPS map, right, they have topo lines all the way almost to the Tompkins Road. So I kind of found that this was, from my point of view, I would have liked to have seen more information on a map with the subdivision to try to understand what my setbacks are from, I have a river near between a road and a river. What are my setbacks from these ishas and et cetera? And I really had a hard time finding all that information. And so that said, maybe you could give me some clarification with my questions on how far is my septic and house from the river? Okay.
Give me one moment.
So,
I think the agent might be online and may be able to answer some of those questions with more detail.
Right.
As far as the setbacks from waterway go, there was a scale bar that was provided, so that gives you a rough estimate, I think, on where the distances are, and then the
yeah,
dash
I think
line.
it's 1 in, what is it, 1 in 300 or 1 in,
There is a
yes.
bar scale underneath the the north.
So,
but
It looks
in
like
addition,
about 200 feet to the road.
yeah. In addition to that, I'm not sure if
I guess here's where I'm going. I would like to see, right, this is a part of it I'd really like to see on our site plans, the distance from, property line and river and Isha, just that. And it's not up to me to scale. That should be on a map, from my point of view. When you're putting these things on proposed, these are our areas we're going to build out, right? That's all. That would be helpful to me, because I start questioning, well, what really is happening here? And I read the staff report, and I didn't get any clarification in the staff report on that, right? So, but if you could answer that for me, that'd be great.
And if I may, unlike the coastal zone, there are no standard setback requirements inland from any sensitive resources, whether it's from a stream, water course, anything like that, or Isha, environmentally sensitive habitat areas, is also not a phrasing that is used in the inland area of the county. So primarily what you would see for any septic standards is environmental health does have standards related to distances from water courses
yes, that's
and
what
such.
I meant.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I'm not comparing it to a coastal development.
Just
permit.
wanted to make that
but
clarification,
I appreciate
yes.
that. No, it was more, hey, how far am I back from these developments from a free-flowing river? All right, Marlena, please.
As Marlena Dooley, Environmental Health. As Julia said, when the septic report comes in, the setback requirements is one of the items that we check in detail. And we do require 1 inch is 50 or less
Right.
scale, because who can
Exactly.
tell exactly? From the submitted paper map, which is scaled at 250 an inch, it's approximately 135 at the closest edge. But the report for the septic would have a better map that would give us the exact distance. So we wouldn't approve one that didn't meet the setback, and that would usually be at least 100 feet. And from that map, it looks like the closest one meets it.
Okay.
At this time.
All right, thank you.
Chair Wiedemann, I do have the applicant raising their hand.
Okay, I hear that. But we're still at the commission right now, and I'm trying to ask some staff, and I'll get to the applicant in a minute. So the other question I had, and I also had one question, and it was regarding, also in one of the boxes were checked off, and I have to find it, find that, bear with me. And I couldn't find the resolution to the potential significant impact. And maybe it was the one Commissioner Jones was referring to, but I'm sorry, I should have tabbed that. I thought I did. And here it is. It's the A 3.2 on page of staff report 14. So we have a potentially significant impact, but I didn't really see, or maybe it's in there and I didn't see it, but is there data to tell me how that's being mitigated?
If I may, I believe that may have just been an error that the potentially significant impact box was checked. If you look in that same line, it does also have the no impact line checked. And when I read the response on page 15, it does say no impact. The mitigation measure is in section 3.7, which relates to geology and soils.
Okay.
And that is the mitigation measure regarding the best management practices being required.
Well, thank you. That was my other question. Any further questions from fellow commissioners, Jones or Pollen? Okay, then we open it up. Let's go to the applicant presentation.
Hi, my name is Court Munsell. I'm with Munsell Civil Engineering and here representing the property owner for the subdivision. Just want to thank the commission for your time in hearing the project today and staff and all the work that you put into evaluating this project. I am here just to answer questions if there are any. I will address the size of the mapping and the scale, and I just apologize if there was anything that wasn't clear on there. It's always a challenge to show everything on a tentative map when the parcels are so big. Certainly we could have zoomed in on the buildable areas for lots 1 and 2. But to talk specifically about the setback, currently the building envelope is shown as 375 feet for lot 1 from the river edge. And the septic is 300 feet from the river edge. And then lot 2, building envelope is roughly 250 feet. And the septic is no more than 125 feet in the closest location to the banks. Happy to answer any additional questions that you have. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for applicant from fellow commissioners? Commissioner Jones?
Oops. Sorry, I don't have any questions on this one.
Commissioner Pollen?
Not at this time, thank you.
And I had a question, and this might even be for you're representing the applicant. Do you know how many CCs are on this property? Certificate of compliances? To the applicant, you might not know that. Yeah, you probably wouldn't know that. Okay, or be aware.
Excuse me, the agent does have his hand raised. So
great.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mr. Munsell.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't. Okay. I'm actually, I don't know the answer to that question. There are 3 AP numbers, but it's all one legal parcel currently, which is what's spurring the application for the subdivision.
And pardon me, I just looked into in the staff report on page 2 on related applications on site, you will see that minor subdivision 101 in 1975 created the current parcel configuration. So there were not certificates of compliance necessarily pursued on this site. It was created through a previous minor subdivision.
Okay. Because okay, that might have been my mistake, that I thought I read that there were CCs
on the neighboring property.
On the
so you
neighboring
did see it in the
properties.
report.
Yes,
It
okay,
just
got
is on
it.
the neighboring
Okay.
property, correct?
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions for the applicant at this point. And with that, I'm going to open up public comment, unless did the applicant have any other thing to respond to?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll open up for public comment, and now we'll hear anybody from the public on this item.
I do not see anyone from the public raising their hand to speak.
All right, seeing that there isn't any telecommenters or virtual Zooms, I will then I'll close the public, well, I'll keep the public comment open, but I'll ask staff if they have any final remarks.
None for me.
And I've already asked the applicant if they had any final remarks. Do you have any? I'll ask you one last time.
No, I don't, thank you.
Okay. And do we have any final questions from the commission for staff? No, I'm not seeing any questions from my fellow commissioners. I'm going to close the public hearing, and then I'm going to take this matter back to the commission for an invitation for a motion.
Pardon me, Chair Wiedemann. I just want to note one additional correction in the initial study. In section 3.21A, it said potentially significant impact. So want to make sure that that's clear, that it is actually less than significant impact. And staff would request that the commission incorporate the noted changes as part of your motion today in whatever action you take.
So
Thank you.
you want that in part of the motion? Yes, okay.
I think you can phrase it as essentially the modifications made to, noted corrections to the initial study as made at today's meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody's giving me the eyeball.
Oh, no, it could be.
I could do it.
Yeah.
You go for it. I never get to do them because we never have anything from my district. I'd like to move that we adopt MS 2022-003, the resolution of the Planning Commission, County of Mendocino, State of California, adopting a mitigated negative declaration and granting of a minor subdivision, subject to the changes noted by staff. Thank you.
All right.
I get to do it.
Do I have a second?
Certainly, I'll second that.
All right. May I have roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan?
Yes.
Chair Wiedemann?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, staff, for that clarification and participating on that. And now we're going to move to agenda item number 7, matters from staff, and I'm going to ask staff if you have any matters today.
Thank you. I want to apologize that I do not have agendized. I know that the commission had asked about talking about sort of the regulations around events within the county, and unfortunately, staff just did not have adequate time with other responsibilities to pull that together. So I'm going to be looked to agendizing that in June. So I just wanted to give you that update so you know I have not forgotten. It is forthcoming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Oh, go ahead.
Commissioner
Go,
Pollan?
no, you please. Well, this isn't a clarifying question, so if you have one.
Well, it's actually just also a different question. I'm just curious what's going on with the inland zoning code update. If you could give us a little brief overview and when we might start looking at it?
That is a great question. We actually have that question posed to our consultant right now. I expect the second administrative draft to be in my inbox in the next week or two, is what the timeline from them is. And provided that staff is comfortable, we don't have major significant changes, I would anticipate it coming before the commission within a couple months. I can give a more precise response once I hear back from our consultant as well.
That's great. And I'm going to assume you're not going to start the environmental document until you bring it forward and get direction from us?
I will check our scope of our contract on that.
Just in case we have changes, it might make it a pain later.
Thank you for that comment. I will take that under advisement.
And any other matters from staff? All right. With that, I'm going to move to item number 8, matters from commission. Do you have any matters to talk about? I just want to bring up a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning would be greatly appreciated, I think, by several of us who live far away.
Thank you. So if I may respond to that, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. So we have noticed several items. Some of our noticing requirements are 30 days lead time for some of these initial studies. So we have already noticed projects with the intent to adopt those mitigated neg decs or negative declarations for 9 a.m. So if the commission does decide that they would like to start at 10 a.m., of course I would want to talk about whether or not it's 10 a.m. in perpetuity or 10 a.m. for only certain time periods. I know the commission previously had done it for winter months, just to not have to drive early in the morning. And then we would have to, I'm looking to my commission staff as well to determine if we've noticed projects into June to determine, and she's shaking her head that we have not. So we could potentially make that change for June moving forward, but if it is a permanent change, I would suggest we amend the bylaws.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that?
I might look to Deputy County Counsel. Thank you.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gudrowski. This is matters from commission. There's nothing to agendize for discussion or a vote. So if there's any questions about bringing an item back in the future to the commission for a bylaw change, we can take direction on that. But that's all.
Okay, but
so we could agendize this for May 18th, if you would like.
Right.
For a discussion and possible action.
Could the future agendas and agendized items be set for 10 a.m. so that we don't have to wait another 30 days? Because I think...
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Gudrowski, if I'm hearing correctly, nothing in June has been noticed yet. And I'm not sure if we have to notice something before May 18th. Otherwise, the bylaw changes would become effective when they were adopted on May 18th.
Okay. All right, 2 weeks. We'll be fine. Thank you. So you're going to bring that back for the May 18th?
Yes, and I was looking at staff. I believe we will have to notice for our June 1st meeting, so likely this new start time would start for your second meeting in June. Gosh, I don't have a calendar.
That's okay.
Right in front of me, but the second meeting in June.
In June. That would be great. Much appreciated for...
And Weed, you brought something up, so I want to bring something up about our terms of engagement here.
Yeah.
And that is currently the commission gets $75 per diem, and I drive 3 hours and then have a 2-hour meeting for that, and so that ends up being about $12 an hour, which is probably the cheapest I work for any of my consulting gigs. I recognize it's not a consulting gig, but you have a fair number of very knowledgeable and skilled people here. And I'm wondering what would be the process to adjust the per diem so that it's a little more in keeping with 2023 costs, yada, yada.
I have to look into that, to be totally frank. I need to make sure I'm looking at all the appropriate sections for that, and it may ultimately require that something go in front of the Board of Supervisors, since it is essentially a department level expense as well, but that's something we can look into and maybe come back with an update on that at a future agenda.
Okay,
that's great.
And I just want to confirm, if we can, to go back to the bylaws. I heard from Commissioner Wiedemann. I just want to confirm there's a majority of the commission that wishes to see that bylaw change come forward.
10 o'clock.
Well, I think there's a majority of those that are here today.
Right.
Well, yes.
personally, I wake up early in the morning anyway, and I like being done earlier, but I'm not gonna, I think it'd be great to bring it up for the whole group, the whole commission to consider. So bringing it up on the 18th would be.
And I'd be happy with 9:30 or 10.
So I hear a general consensus then to bring that forward, and then
Yes.
obviously you'll
Yes.
have discussion before you do a formal
Exactly.
adoption. Great, thank you.
Exactly. All right. So any other matters from the commission today? Nothing, huh? Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank staff, and I want to say I'm going to invite a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned at 11, I'm going to call it 11:30. And thank you very much.